Hey friends, so today we're going to talk about value. Value refers to the lightness or darkness of something. So let's take a look at this assignment that I had to do for an art class that I took. At the top I have a value scale going from the darkest value to the lightest value that I have in my drawing. And it's up there so that I can make sure that in my drawing I have all of these values showing somewhere in my drawing to make it look realistic. So you can see the darkest part where the light doesn't hit, and then you can see the lightest value where the light would hit. Now, I will say that this drawing was not a lot of fun to make. When you want to practice adding value to your drawing or making your drawings more realistic, it's okay to draw something that you really enjoy drawing. So for example, this is something that I drew that I really enjoyed drawing, something like this. So it was a lot more fun for me, and I still practiced using values, so you can see the really light values and the darker values. So that's just something to think about when you're drawing. It's important to draw something that you enjoy drawing. Okay, so we're going to make a value scale today, but before I do that, I want to talk a little tiny bit about pencils. So you might be just using this kind of pencil, which is what I'm going to use today when I demonstrate this, but I want you to know a little bit about the different kinds of pencils that you can get. So this is a Blick Studio drawing pencil set, and when you get a set like this, you'll see the pencils in here have numbers and letters on them. So the letters are either H or B, and H means that the graphite is a little bit harder. So when you use an HB pencil, you'll get a lighter value, and the B means that the graphite is a little bit softer. So when you use a B pencil, you'll get a darker value. It just makes it a little bit easier to draw your values. But we're going to use a regular pencil. If you have these kinds of pencils, definitely experiment with them and see how much easier it is to create values. But for now, we're just going to assume that we have regular old school pencil. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a value scale, and the first thing that you'll need to do is create a rectangle, and you're going to just draw some lines in your rectangle. You know what, I've created mine too big. I don't want to have to shade anything that big for this practice, so don't make yours that big. I'm going to turn it over and make them just a little bit smaller. They only need to be about an inch each. So I'll go like that. Okay, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is going to be my lightest value. It's going to be white. That's as light as it gets. This will be my next lightest value. And to do my next lightest value, you want to make the lightest gray you can possibly make. So you're going to hold your pencil sideways, hold it away from the tip, and you're going to just let gravity do the work. Your tip is just kind of resting on the paper, and you're just going to let gravity do the work. And you're making the lightest value you possibly can. So it's slightly darker than the white, that's your first box, but it's very, very light. Okay, so that's going to be my first pass over, okay? All right, so now my next one, this is going to be my third value. I'm going to start the same way. I'll hold my pencil sideways, and I'm not going to press down. I'm just letting gravity do the work. It does take a lot of patience when you are working on this part of your drawing, when you're creating the value. You do have to be patient. It's okay to leave it and come back and continue working on it. Okay, so these two values look very similar. And of course, that's not what we want. We want this value to be a little bit darker. So to make it darker, I'm going to go over it again the same as I did for the first time. So I'm basically making 2 passes over this. So you can see why I didn't want to make a gigantic square to do this, right? Okay, so now I've made 2 passes, and you can tell that this third square is a little bit darker. Okay, so I have white, light gray, and this one's just a little bit darker. So for the fourth box, I'm going to apply just enough pressure to get a darker value. I'm not going to press too hard. If it looks the same, then I'm just going to go over it and make another layer. But I'm going to move my fingers down a little bit on the pencil, and I'm going to press just a little bit harder. So I want to make this value a little bit darker. If when I'm finished doing this square, if the value looks too similar to the number 3 square, then I'll just go ahead and make another pass and go over it again. Now, it takes a lot of practice to do this and to get your values to be even. You can see that this isn't even here. So this value is darker and this value is lighter. So I'm going to need to go over this again to even it out. You need to know that any kind of drawing takes a lot of practice, and don't give up. It just takes a lot of practice, and exercises like this are what make you better at drawing. Okay? Okay, so I can definitely see that this value is darker. I'm not happy with this right here, but that's okay. This is an exercise. This is practice. It isn't going to be perfect. Okay, so now I want to go to the 5th box. So here I'm going to apply a little more pressure, and so I'm going to move my hand a little bit closer to the tip. Still not a ton of pressure because I don't want to make marks on my paper. And the first pass is probably going to be about the same as number 4. I actually still prefer to hold my fingers a little further up on the pencil. I find that if I hold my fingers too close to the point, I just make my values just too dark. Okay, so as I'm doing this, I'm just looking carefully to see if I've made the value fairly similar to the one in the 4th box, and those look really similar, so I know I need to make another pass over here. So when you're drawing or creating value with a pencil, the pencil is gray, so you're never going to get a truly black value. You can get a really dark value depending on how many layers you make or how hard you press, but it's never going to be a true black. So I just wanted you to know that. Okay, so that is definitely darker. Okay, so this is a value scale that we made by shading. I want to show you another technique that you can use to create a value scale. So I'm going to make another set of boxes. Remember, don't make them too big. And that will be white. That's going to be our lightest value. And for this one, we're actually going to do some scribbling. So again, you're going to hold your pencil towards the end, and you're just going to be making, some people call this scrumbling. Okay, so this is a good technique to use when you would like to add some texture. So you can see that this would be a good technique to use maybe if you're making trees from far away. Okay, so now I'm going to go to my 2nd box, and when you're using this technique, you will create a darker value by filling in more of the white with your scribbling air. Okay, so this is a little bit darker, and as I go to the next box, I will just fill in more of the area, just randomly scribbling. And if you find that you're not making your value dark enough, make sure you're filling in the edge areas. Okay, and then for my last one, I'm going to just pretty much be scribbling to fill in the whole area. Okay, so for me, I kind of find this one a little more enjoyable, but it's used for the purpose of creating some texture. Okay, so that is our value scale if you are scribbling. All right, so I want to show you another way to create value. So I'm still going to make my value scale. And, sorry about that, guys. For this one, we are going to do hatching. So hatching means parallel lines. And again, we're going to leave the first one empty. And when you're doing hatching, the lightest value, or you're going to create a light value by making your lines really far apart. As you want to get darker, then your lines are going to be a little bit closer together. Okay? And so for this one, they're going to be even closer. And by the time you get to the darkest value, your lines are practically overlapping. So if I wanted to do this, my lines would be practically overlapping. And as I create this value scale, I can go back and add, or, well, I can't really take away unless you have an eraser, but we're not going to get into that right now. But you can see how we go from white to gray to darker gray all the way to a fairly dark value. And again, the closer you put those parallel lines, the darker your value will get. So that's called hatching. Okay, so the next one we're going to learn is exactly the same as hatching, but it's called cross-hatching. It's the lines just go in two different directions. And it's the same idea. The more lines you have, the darker your value is going to be. So I can start, that's going to be my lightest value. My lines will be a little bit closer together. So I'll create a little bit of a darker value. And then for our fourth square, I'll make my lines even closer together. And your lines can go in different directions. And when you're doing this, you can even move your paper around and make lines going in additional directions. I'll show you on this last one. So for the last one, my darkest value, I want these lines to be as close together. They're practically overlapping. Okay, so I might want to add a few more lines going in this direction, and then a few more going in this direction. And sometimes people will turn their paper and then they'll draw some lines going horizontally or vertically. So you could make an entire value scale doing what I've done on this last one. Okay, so that is cross-hatching. Okay, so you may have heard of stippling. So stippling is when you create value using dots. So it works like cross-hatching and hatching. The fewer dots you have, the lighter the value. The more dots, the closer the dots are together, the darker the value. Stippling is actually, you would want to use, that's what you use when you're using a pen. Stippling is not something you would want to use with a pencil for a couple of reasons. It would take you forever. And the reason that you do it with a pen is because you can't do shading with a pen. So that's why you have to create value using a different method. So stippling is something I would recommend that you do if you are using a pen. So when you stipple, and I'm not using a pen, I'm just showing you what this would be like, but you can see that you would have to take a long time and take lots of breaks because it would take you a long time to create a dark value using stippling. Okay? All right, so what I'd like you to do is just get a plain piece of paper, and I'd like you to practice making value using shading, scribbling, hatching, and cross-hatching, just like I've done on this video. And then you can choose one of the practice activities to do on Google Classroom, either creating an op art piece or something like this. This is an option too. So for this piece, what I did was just create a rectangle, and I just made different lines that were creating shapes. Okay, all I did was draw a line here and then another line beside it so that my line would actually create a shape. So make different widths and different kinds of curves, and then make a value scale down here. And then make sure that you color each line using one of the values. This value scale has 6 boxes. That's okay. I mean, you can create a value scale that has 10 boxes if you want. I'm only asking you to do one that has 5 boxes. But this is a really good way to practice creating these different values, right? So then you can check and see, does my darkest value match this value that I created up here? So this is another way you can practice valuing. All right, friends, thanks for watching this video, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.